You're listening to Trouvaille Talks Travel on Tucson Business Radio.
Yeah, welcome to Trouvaille Travel Talk. This is our second edition in October 28th, if I remember, of 2019. And we have two guests with us today. The first is Donna Reed from Keller Williams, Arizona South. She is a realtor. And Melissa Rossier, who's a Guild mortgage loan officer. And we are here again to talk travel. And what we're going to do today is sort of split the show into two halves. The first half is talking about travel within Arizona, and we all have areas of Arizona that we like, that we visited, that we kind of gravitate to. And the second half of the show, we'll talk about farther away. Destinations in the U.S. that you like, that you've been to, that you want to go to, and, of course, the rest of the world. So there's a lot to talk about. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm glad you're here. And you too, Melissa.
Thanks.
I really appreciate that you're both here. So we all have different perspectives. We've been in Arizona different lengths of time, and I've only been in Arizona for 2 years physically myself. So, Donna, how long have you been in Arizona?
This will be my 20th year. I moved when the computers were going to all crash between 1999 and 2000.
Oh, that's
and
wonderful.
So coming up on 20 years.
Pseudo failure.
Yeah.
And Melissa, how long have you been in Arizona?
49 years, my whole life.
Wow.
All right. Oh, you're
I'm a native.
a Tucsonan.
I'm a Tucsonian.
Not a Tucsonian, a Tucsonan.
Get it
Yes,
right.
I
That's
learned.
right.
I learned. So let's just start with where you've traveled within the state of Arizona and that what really appeals to you and what makes Arizona unique compared to the rest of the country. Donna, would you like to start?
Sure. That is a really big question. One of the things that I love about Arizona is that it's so diverse. And it's diverse from the people that live here, and it's diverse from the terrain, the temperatures, the activities available. If people only come and they golf, they don't know that you can ski. Or if they go to the Grand Canyon and they don't know that they can come south and that it's a desert, but it's not the Mojave Desert. It's a different kind of desert. So
yeah, absolutely. The plateau, once you get up to Flagstaff, that's really the demarcation that separates the hot from the not so hot. Mm-hmm. So what is your preference? Where have you been around the state, and where have you been?
So that where I haven't been is I haven't been back to the Grand Canyon, which is ridiculous. I love going into Show Low or Pine Top in the summer months, to get away, to be in kind of a rural ranching cowboy, kind of town compared to the city of Tucson. I love driving through the Salt River Canyon. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the state.
Where's that at?
It is as I head north on 77 and around Oracle and through Winkleman, headed
that
up.
way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, up
to
there.
Show Low and Pine Top.
So as far as drive time from here, how far?
Three
About
to
3
4
hours?
hours.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just beautiful. And then recently, I have started doing what I consider the things that nobody lives in a place typically does.
Mm-hmm.
So besides going to Winslow to see, of course, where the flatbed Ford was and take the picture there, I love seeing the history related to the old hotels and the trains and Route 66 and things like that. I like visiting some of the smaller places and finding the really unique pieces of Arizona history.
Yeah, I get your point there, because one thing I did over the summer is I drove up to North Dakota to get my kids, and I took a route that took me to many small towns through the middle of the country, and I passed through the cow chip capital of the world.
Awesome.
I forget which little town that was, but hey, it was something I did not expect. But yeah. Melissa, what about you?
Well, as a native, my perspective is probably a little bit different. Mm-hmm. I was born in San Manuel, which is a little mining company or mining town about 45 minutes from here. From there, I lived in Mammoth and Oracle and Kearney and Safford and all of these little bitty towns. So Tucson, to me, when I moved to Tucson in 1982, was a culture shock. I mean, right in the middle of 7th grade, 12 years old, my parents took me from a school that had maybe 100 kids in it and plopped me into a junior high that had 800.
Wow, yeah.
So very different, right? It was just small town to big city. Now that I'm older, I can appreciate those little bitty towns because I have so many memories in them. In fact, not too long ago, I put the kids in the car and we did a road trip. And we headed north on 77 to San Manuel, showed them all of the homes that I lived in San Manuel, did the same in Oracle. We did the same in Kearney, Safford. We just did a day trip. And it's funny how all of those memories come back. And when I got into the town, even though it's been so many years later, I was able to go back directly to the house that we lived in. And in San Manuel, there were 3 or 4 at least, you know. So my favorite spot in Arizona is, I would say, right here in Tucson. I love to hike. So Sabino Canyon is my go-to place. Sweetwater is my new place, being on a different side of town now. And Havasupai Falls is where that's my bucket list for hiking, which, you know, you have to be on a list. It's like a lottery. So February 1st of next year, I'll put my number in and let's hope I get picked.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Yeah, since I've been here, one of the little treasures of Tucson that I found was the Botanical Garden. And I don't know if it's still there, but they had a butterfly exhibit in the Botanical Garden. And you really wouldn't expect right off of Grant and Alvernon which, you know, Grant and Alvernon is interesting. But the Tucson Botanical Garden is just off of Alvernon, and it's this little oasis.
Beautiful.
And it really is beautiful. And I think a lot of people don't really think about it.
It's like Tohono Chul Park. Tohono Chul is kind of the same way.
I was thinking the same thing, yeah, for sure.
Because it's unique. It's very special. It has a lot to offer there. But how many times I have driven down Grant, and if I didn't turn south, you wouldn't know because the sign for the garden isn't that big, and there's no clue that it's going to be there.
Well, you don't expect it to be at Grant and Alvernon. Such a beautiful place.
Exactly. And the other was the Desert Museum that I went there for the first time with my wife and my kids last summer. And I absolutely adore that place. It's just and one thing they had there that I didn't expect was a stingray pool, which a desert museum first off, but having a special stingray exhibit where you can feed the stingrays, you can pet the stingrays, and it was very cool. And my kids were all excited about that, and they got to get the little fish and feed the stingrays. And it was again something that it does highlight the area as far as the wildlife that's around here and the plant life that, you know, a desert, you know, what do most people think of deserts? Let's see, sand and cactus. But there's a lot more than that. And that's, although it's a bit west to get there, it's one of those unique areas that really does highlight the Southwest.
Everybody says that's like the number one must do when you come to Tucson to learn about the desert.
Yeah, and I haven't been there in I don't know how long, so I feel kind of guilty. And I had no idea they had stingrays. So
they did. I tend to think it's not a permanent exhibit, but just check. But either way, it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Paul, something that as we're talking comes back to me because I'm from farmland in Ohio, so near Lake Erie, where really rich dark soil. And when I moved here, I kind of was amazed that anything could grow. And there's been the relearning of the seasons. But for me as a tourist, something that's been fascinating is to stop at like Montezuma's Well or Montezuma's Castle on the way to Sedona, because you learn about how the Anasazi Indians farmed. Oh, yeah. And that's, to me, fascinating. Like, I still don't know what to plant here, what time of year, and I've been here 20 years. But I am so, and cotton, I thought cotton grew where it was humid. Like, I was shocked to see cotton fields. So I think that there's just so much to discover in this state, you know.
That you mentioned cotton, I think was very interesting because I was watching, I forget what news channel, but it was about the last election, but they interviewed a farmer down in cotton fields in Arizona, and I'm going, what? cotton in Arizona, and there's a lot of cotton, in the southeast part of the state?
Safford is a big cotton place. Yeah.
Is it?
Okay, yeah. And I bet you less than 1% of people outside of Arizona would know that. Even people in Arizona may not know that, because it's one of those things you just don't expect.
Right.
And and that's the nice thing about, you don't always have to travel far to learn something new and experiencing something new. It's always traveling is great, and you always think about going somewhere far away, but you don't have to. I mean, in Tucson, you don't have to leave Tucson. You can go to the Desert Museum, you can go to the Botanical Garden, or go hiking. Because what happens, at least the perspective I have, is a lot of people, where you live in a certain place, you get complacent.
Exactly right.
You have your job, you have your family, you have your hobbies, and you forget to do something a little bit different. And that's happened everywhere. And I remember when I went to Paris, and we'll talk about France eventually, is you have all of the museums and the Eiffel Tower, but the locals are like, you know,
Yeah.
They live there. Yeah, it's there. And it's a interesting sort of, I don't know, not a blasé mentality about it, but just sort of, yeah, I live there, and it's not that terribly special.
We take it for granted.
We do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's
When
you know.
we first moved here, I had a son that was in 8th grade. And in Ohio, the schools were such that you were in one building. There was no campus per se. So when he got to CDO, I remember him coming home, I don't know if that was 9th grade or 10th grade, and saying, I wonder how long it takes for you to get used to the fact that there's a mountain in your backyard, because in the farmland near Lake Erie, there were no mountains. And you left and you went outside and you walked around. So, yeah.
That's interesting, yeah, because we just assume everybody has mountains.
Right.
Not in North Dakota.
No.
Right.
Or Iowa. No. Yeah, the biggest mountains in North Dakota are the Badlands in the western part of the state, and they are nothing compared to the South Dakota Badlands. Right. The South Dakota Badlands are the ones that are, wow. The North Dakota Badlands are like the sickly stepchild. They're still kind of nice, mind you. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's not as grand.
Yeah.
But as far as, I have been to Arizona before I moved here a few times, and one was on a geology field trip as an undergraduate at Iowa State University. Iowa, more pigs than people by a factor of 6. Remember that? I think I've told you that before. Because it's Iowa, and, I know a little bit about the place. But we went to Meteor Crater, which is up by Winslow. And, as a geology student and somebody who got a PhD in geology, that's one of the things about Arizona that you can't find in a lot of places. A relatively fresh impact crater from an iron meteorite that was about 80 meters across, happened about roughly 50,000 years ago, and it's basically a hole in the ground. And they built a museum right by it, and you can get fragments of the meteorite in the visitor center. And this was, just think of a big chunk of metal, basically an iron meteorite is what it is, coming in at an oblique angle, and it basically punched a hole in the ground. Wow. And if that would happen today, it would be like a nuclear bomb going off, essentially, as far as the dust cloud and the amount of debris. Because when you go there, you can't go down into the hole. I think you can, in a group event, you can go down there, but you can't go by yourself. But really, you go to the rim of the crater and you look in, and it is a mile wide.
Have you ever been there?
Where is this?
It's in It's up near Flagstaff.
Interesting. I've never heard of it.
See, that's for geology.
He's a science guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the geology, the rock guy in me, loves this kind of stuff, and debris from the meteorite. You could call it a small asteroid too, as far as that goes. It was big enough that people collected all the metal. They found it, eventually, and they used it. And iron meteorites were used as tools in the past. It's iron, it's metal, it's useful. And this is just one example of the number of impacts that have hit the planet since it's been around for 4.5 billion years. There are plenty of impact craters that have eroded, are hard to detect visually today. But like the big one is the one in Yucatan that pretty much killed off the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. That was a 10-kilometer wide asteroid. The one up by Flagstaff or Winslow was about 50 meters. Yeah, it's the size of this building, roughly ballparkish.
How long ago was this? Like that this happened?
50,000 years ago, about. So not yesterday.
You said like more recent. And I thought like, how recent?
Well,
How did I miss that?
Well, from a geologist perspective, that is recent.
Yeah.
So go back in the Triassic, that was a while ago, So that's one of the areas that I like about Arizona. And the other is sort of related, is Sunset Crater National Monument, which one thing a lot of people don't know about Arizona and New Mexico is that there was a lot of volcanism as far as intracontinental. No, not Vulcans. No, this isn't Star Trek. No, this is more rock stuff. Lava flows above ground. You think about volcanoes, you think they're on the coast, usually, or on islands like the Caribbean and such. But there is, when I say intracontinental, I mean, within the confines of the United States, for example, not on the coast. Arizona and New Mexico, especially New Mexico, have a lot of overland volcanism. And another example is Yellowstone sits above a geologic hotspot. Just think you're sitting above a big pool of lava, essentially, that hasn't come up. Yellowstone often is called a supervolcano that could go off any time. And of course, any time could be a million years down the road, or it could be,
Tomorrow.
No, hopefully not. I don't really want that. I don't think anybody wants that. And another example, and this is going across the world, but to India, the Deccan Flats is another example of there are these vast lava flows over land that you really don't think about that when you think about volcanoes and mountains and eruptions and things like that. So that brought out the rock guy in me. And a question for you two, since you two have been here for a while, have either of you been up to Kitt Peak?
Once for a field trip, like in the 9th or 10th grade.
Isn't that pathetic? And I
So
haven't been there.
pathetic.
People come here and they go there, and
From
we live
all over
here
the
and
world,
we don't.
people go to Kitt Peak.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
It's world renowned as far as telescopes go.
Right. It's one of the. It's not just one observatory. It's a collection of observatories that are run by different institutes and universities and such. And I'd say, ballpark, the number of telescopes up there. Yeah, it's a dozen-ish.
And you can go day or night, right? There's like the night viewing ones, but you can also do daytime trips, I think.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's both. The visitor center there does tours. You can do that during the day and at night. Mm-hmm. You can get tours inside some of the larger observatories. There's solar observing during the day. You can look at the sun through the telescope, not with your naked eye. That would be bad. Let's just make it clear. Don't look up at the sun.
Full disclosure.
I know. You gotta be safe on this.
Right,
Right. And of course the telescope's at night. But it's about 2 hours west of Tucson. I live on the east side. To get up there takes about 2 hours, and you can go on a walk around yourself and not pay anything. You can go get a guided tour. They're relatively cheap too, and that's nice. They have them a few times during the day, and you can also have group trips up there. So it's active, but I guess from my perspective, being an astronomer, it's actually underutilized in the sense that there are facilities that are no longer being used. One of the solar telescopes, it has the McMath Pierce solar telescope. That is one of the largest solar telescopes in the world. The National Science Foundation shut it down a few years ago, and they were trying to get some consortia to take it over, to run it, and I don't think they've been successful in that. But you go there and you can look at it, and it's, to me, when I went on the tour, I just had this very much, wow, this feels like the 1960s. I also went to another solar telescope in New Mexico at Sacramento Peak called the Dunn Solar Telescope, and that was a former Air Force base, and it is all very 1960s feel. It's not that modern, but works, and that's the thing about. And funny, they shut some of this stuff down because in Hawaii they're building the largest solar telescope in the world on Maui, and that's going to be massive. But Kitt Peak, despite all of this, is still being used. The biggest telescope is a 4-meter. I think it's the Mile telescope, and there are others that are of varying sizes. So again, it all comes down to money. The more money you can get to do science, the more you can retrofit these telescopes and get them all working. But despite that, there still is productive work going on there all the time. And people should really go, because Tucson is not just desert. It's not just cactus. It's not just hiking. You have this little science astronomy mecca that's not that far away that, again, people probably don't go to. They don't think of it much. And I've had people inquire from Texas to want to go on a tour of Kitt Peak. Yet in Tucson, it's like the botanical garden. It's there, but a lot of people don't know about it.
We forget about it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of, okay, how do you better inform people or advertise? I mean, advertising is advertising, but the way to, I guess, remind people.
So my cousin is coming this week from Ohio, and he has never been to Tucson. And I actually asked on Facebook, if we can only do one thing, should we do the Desert Museum or Sabino Canyon? And it was really interesting to read the responses. And then somebody said, is he more interested in history and learning the desert, or just beautiful views? So, and I thought that was interesting, because you're right. And if we maybe can do both, but I'm not sure. And I thought that's a really good question to ask him. Yeah. Do you just want to see the canyons and the water that's coming down that people don't even think exists in the desert,
true. Yeah.
and stuff? So that the Kitt Peak might be the same way. If you know that the people that are coming are science, night sky, people, then, this is a place we need to do. Same with the Boneyard, right? Like if they were pilots or into planes or military or something, like,
true, yeah.
we need to get them to that place, because that's going to impact their visit.
Right. And what people's, like you sort of alluded to, people's interests, that makes a big difference. And when you mentioned the Boneyard, I thought of the Air and Space Museum, mm-hmm. which, again, is really kind of a gem.
Yeah.
That my kids loved it there. They kind of met other kids there, and so they were off running around. We didn't have to do anything. They were out getting in planes, getting in cockpits, and running around and enjoying that. And that's something you don't find everywhere. Yeah, which is really neat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and then there is the Sonoita area and the wineries down there. And again, when you think of wineries, people typically don't think of Arizona.
This is true.
And there's not just one winery down there. There are several, and it's a little collection of wineries in a particular area of Arizona that have built up over decades, and it's something that is just not expected. It's like cotton in Arizona.
You're making me think about all the things I should try to do with my cousin next week. I'm like, we should go to the wineries. We should go here. Yeah. The caves,
Yeah. We need to make the time.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the problem.
Exactly, because it's so easy to, I have a day off. I'm not going to do anything because I'm tired, But and there is value in downtime, obviously, but appreciating where you live and where you're at. And the one thing that I have done around here that I really, really enjoy is going up Mount Lemon, because that's very close. It's only an hour to get to the top of Mount Lemon.
20 degrees cooler.
Yeah, that too. And you could bike up. People bike up and down. That's a lot of work. There are a lot of stops you can go along the way up.
It's beautiful just to sit and look out over the city.
Oh yeah. And once you get to the top, Well, that it snows up there in the winter is kind of funny to me because I've experienced way too much winter. And when we're down, in East Tucson, and remember in February, was it, that we had a snow?
Yeah.
That we had like
it was a lot for
inch,
Tucson.
like
A lot, yeah, air quotes.
It was a lot.
And inches of snow. But, looking up at the mountains and seeing the snow cover, it's like, okay, well, it can stay there, But, yeah, the snow doesn't bother me too much. It's minus 30. That's more annoying. And you have to really like cold weather to want to deal with that. Mm-hmm. But snow's nothing. It was funny when it snowed in Tucson and people were making the, 6-inch snowman. Somebody said that it snows.
I was very excited.
Yeah.
You made that little snowman.
I was the one who made that little, or wrote it on my, my window. Snow 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it only happens every 6-ish years or so, so it's not something that happens every day.
Well, and the ski resort on Mount Lemmon, this is something else that I think about the difference between my oldest son and his experience being in high school in Ohio and spring break and maybe what that would have looked like, for an Ohio high school kid or college kid. And for my youngest, who did middle school and high school here, there was one spring break where he went snow skiing and then to California and surfing all in the same week. And I was like, that is very different than my world that I grew up in. So we have access however many days a year that there's snow up on Mount Lemmon. They said it's like a private little resort when you're up there, skiing and stuff. So
I was surprised at the top of Mount Lemmon that the amount of construction that was going on, as far as they looked like condos, but they were, homes of some sort that were building. And do either of you know, I heard from somebody that apparently there were fires up there in the not too distant past.
I want to say it was like 2004.
I just was having
the entire
that conversation.
Mountain burned down.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
there was a lot.
So all of those homes that you see now, for the majority, correct me if I'm wrong, are rebuilds.
Right, one whole side of the mountain. There's a lot of new stuff.
It was devastating. Yeah, I mean, businesses taken out by the fire.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in my driveway, looking up at Mount Lemmon and just watching it. It was like front row seat.
I was with El
burning.
Conquistador that summer, and I remember they were doing fireworks. And as a person that was fairly new to Tucson, I thought, they're going to do fireworks and the mountain is burning. But anyway, that's why there's a lot of new construction.
Always a concern here, too, fireworks in the summer,
And that reminds me of what's going on in California right now, is they're going through fires again.
Well, there is a fire on Mount Lemmon.
Yeah,
right now?
Mount Basin. Molino Basin. Molino Basin. So the road to Mount Lemmon, as we speak, is closed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and the wind doesn't help. It's been a bit windy, and you don't expect a lot of wind here, but it's been a bit windy.
Crazy.
Yeah, driving home, it's like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, where in Arizona, wrapping up the Arizona discussion, is if you were going to go someplace else in Arizona, what would be your next visit if you had to make a choice? Start off with you, Donna.
There's actually two things I want to do. One of them is on this book about things you have to do in Arizona. There's a place in Bisbee that's an Airstream trailer campground park that my son always stays at when he goes to the blues festival down there. And it just looks retro and fun, which is kind of silly, but I want to do that.
That does sound fun.
Yeah. And I've never been to, Lake Havasu, So I've never been up to Lake Havasu.
You must go.
Sometimes I feel like I not just need to do a tour of Phoenix because, there's somebody in Gilbert and there's somebody in Scottsdale and there's somebody in Cave Creek. And Phoenix is so big that to just say you're going to Phoenix.
Right. But honestly, Donna, if you were to do Lake Havasu, right now is the best time to do it.
Is it?
It is. It's beautiful.
Okay.
It's gorgeous.
I haven't
It's
done
on
that
the Colorado River.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, it's crazy with boats because
I've
you have the
seen
California
that,
side
yes,
and the Arizona side. But right now is beautiful because it's not too hot.
Yeah.
And it's just
That's
gorgeous.
good to know.
Yeah, for sure.
So what about you?
Oh, boy. That's a tough one. Sedona is my new favorite. It is. There's something, as they say, magical about Sedona. And the Red Rock, and it's just beautiful. And then I would like to visit the Grand Canyon again. The last time I went, I was maybe 7 or 8. Did not appreciate it. My parents drug us up there. Here's a hole in the ground. It was the whole, National Lampoon's Vacation, or Chevy
This is
Chase.
going to be great fun.
Yeah, no. So I think those would be my 2 go-tos right now.
I would have to say Sedona myself because I haven't been there and I've heard so much about it.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So it's and just from again going back to the rock part of me is the geology as well as the culture there.
The vortex.
Yeah.
Right.
All there. Yeah.
The vortex. That's right. Can't forget the vortex.
Cannot forget the vortex. But it's beautiful there. And again, 4 hours maybe from door to door.
It's a day trip to get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason I started off with Arizona is talking about Trouvaille a little bit is we do multiple things. Trouvaille is developing into really a full-service travel company in the sense that one of the 3 components of the company is day trips. All-inclusive day trips currently in the Tucson area and New York City where, beginning to end, we create experiences for people to really experience the local area. And we just completed 2 day trips for New York City residents where they went to upstate. We took 2 groups of 35 to a zip lining park and to a farmstead, and to an art museum over 2 different Saturdays. And, it's all planned out for them, and they get to have a day away from, being in downtown Manhattan and being in upstate where there's actually grass. And we're doing the same thing in Tucson and developing, I mentioned Kip Peak and Sonoita, and we want to develop more. So these are one way to really highlight the local area, because you don't have to spend $3,000 and go halfway around the world to experience something new. And that's really important. But, you do have the other part of the world, and those are our signature travel experiences, which are also almost all-inclusive experiences in the U.S. and around the world. So we have those from Hawaii to Florida to Maine to Napa Valley and
St. Lucia, don't you have one coming up?
St. Lucia is actually December of next year.
Okay.
But the next one, we have our 2020 lineup. Let's see, we have Florida, we have Hawaii, we have, I should know all this, shouldn't I? St. Lucia, Ireland, Isle of Man, Cook Islands, and the new addition is the sailing experience in the Bahamas that we just added. So that's 2021 actually, but I like planning early, so get out, because that's really the key is you not only develop a compelling itinerary, and you have it so you make travel easier for everybody. So it's as all inclusive as you can get. Have it not just be your average ordinary trip somewhere, because anybody can go to any of these destinations, but the idea is to really have a bit of a dive into the culture and have an understanding of what it's like to live on the Isle of Man. Gosh, the Isle of Man, the longest continuously running parliament in the world, more than 1,000 years. Continuously running
He
parliament.
needs to go beyond Jeopardy, like
He
in the
does.
travel category.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I know.
So sort of live like the locals,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
what your goal is with these trips.
Exactly. And it's something that really is meant to add value to people's lives. And I kind of have my whipping horse that I use as examples of what a lot of people do, but what shouldn't do. And I pick on Sandals Resorts in the Caribbean, because Sandals has a very good model. They're successful. A good company. They do good work. But let's go to a Sandals Resort in St. Lucia on one side of the island, and you stay there, and you do your thing. You stay on the resort, and you don't go off the resort because you're there. You miss the whole island. You miss the culture because you really don't experience the culture. You don't experience the history. You don't experience the food. It's really, I guess I would say it's lacking. And if you really are going to travel, you're going to spend the time, you're going to spend the money, and traveling does take an effort. And that's why a lot of people don't travel, is that if you're going to go somewhere, you should get something out of it.
Absolutely.
And so that's really the point and the whole thing. And the other thing, just really quickly with Trouvaille that we're developing is a business-to-business component to help businesses in their travel plans, whether it's doing trips for them or travel planning for them. So that's really the third component compared to what we started out with, which was just the big trips. Well, I did my homework and looked at other businesses that do this type of thing, and they don't do all three. They do the big trips mostly. They don't do day trips much. And then once you add a B2B component, there's really nobody else. So, but let's stick to the, let's get out of Arizona now as much as we love Arizona. And let's Donna, France obviously comes to mind since she speaks French. Tell us about I forget the organization that you worked with.
I traveled with?
Right.
Yeah, I traveled with Up With People.
Right. Okay, that's it.
When I was 18, just a day or two ago. And I'm from a town also that's really small, Melissa, a town of like 500 people.
Okay.
But my parents had traveled a reasonable amount because back then my father would win trips by selling a certain amount of insurance. And I don't know that I ever thought I needed to go to a specific place or what. It was just kind of this built-in inherent desire. And Up With People, which is international, allowed me to create relationships with people from other places. So the first time that I traveled abroad on my own was 1978, and almost that entire trip I stayed with people in the cities. So as you talk about being local and immersing, they take you to the tourist places. You still go to the Eiffel Tower or whatever, but they also take you to the best little restaurant that everybody else doesn't know about, and
the
things
hole
like,
in the wall.
Yeah. And you get to do some things that I would say the average tourist doesn't get to do. So that probably is what initiated my interest in travel.
That evoked a memory in me. Is right after high school I was in the Navy, and when I was in the Navy I was on an aircraft carrier for 16 months and 17 days. I've memorized that.
And 8 hours.
I know. The USS Independence, but one of our port stops was in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And it looked like another big city. And as we were going on shore, the locals were handing out coupons to McDonald's of all places, which it's like, I'm sorry, I don't want to go to McDonald's.
That's funny.
Yeah. But what we did do, a couple of guys I worked with and we kind of hunted around, just walking around, and we found a average, ordinary family restaurant is somewhere in Singapore. And we ate there, and we were the only Americans there, so we were stared at incessantly, but that was okay. But it really was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And,
and if it's popular with the locals, it's good.
Exactly.
Right? That's the point. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And even though we were, kind of the object of curiosity, while we were there, that's what you want to do. And also, the last time I was in St. Lucia, the taxi driver, as we were going up to Rodney Bay, he asked me, hey, do you want to stop off at this side place to get some freshly made bread and cheese? And it's like, sure, why not? And so, parked at the side of the road, there was this big wooden hearth oven about 20 feet tall. This old guy was baking bread fresh. And they were just selling fresh bread stuffed with cheese. I mean, bread and cheese. I mean, you had to be there. Yeah. And, we're standing there and reggae music is playing. And I'm the only American, the only white guy there. And I'm standing there and it's like, this is how I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't understand somebody else's perspective from where they live, how they live their lives, what's going on with them, unless you're actually there with them and not getting all of your information
from a book,
filtered from a book or from TV, because it all filters through. And if you want to really connect, which is really what this is all about, is you have to talk to people and you have to be there with them. There's really no replacement.
Right.
Because And even if FaceTiming, that's not the same thing. As great as it is to communicate today, as easy it is to communicate today around the world, it's not the same as being face to face. And I think a lot of people don't think about that.
It's true. Yeah.
You have to have the interplay of all of your senses. Like I'm waiting for the computer to be able to have smells.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Because then if somebody's FaceTiming me in their pizza restaurant, be like, oh, I can smell the pizza because, we live in a Jetsons world anyway. So I'm just waiting for that to happen.
Yeah. But you're right. It's something about hearing the traffic and hearing the people and just hearing the busyness of the day, right? Being there.
Right.
It changes your perspective. Because all I know is Tucson, really. I've never lived anywhere else but Tucson and Werkle and San Manuel. So to go to another city, and see what they do every day, and
You were just in New York, weren't you, with your daughter?
yeah. So
Had you been there before?
I had been to New York once. If I may, my goal this year for the kids, it's not about things, it's about memories. So, they're older, they don't need anything, but I can give them memories. So I feel really fortunate to have, pick a place where you want to go. Kid number 1 was New York. So we went to New York, and the trips are 36 hours at most. We get on a plane, we fly there. We go to see the things, but we eat local. We eat where the locals are, and we walk and we take the local transportation. Kid number 2 was Seattle. Same thing, right? And then kid number 3 was Chicago. Same thing. It was so much fun. We were everywhere, all in a span of 3 months. And literally the trips, we would leave on a Thursday or a Friday and be back on Saturday or Sunday. So just really quick trips. But what I'm trying to teach them is that your perspective should be so much greater than Tucson. Go, travel, leave. And if you want to come back, that's great. But you owe it to yourself to go and see what else is out there.
Right.
Because you grow as a person that way. So, we really enjoyed it. We had the best time.
Where in New York did you go?
New York City.
Where in the city, though?
Manhattan. Manhattan, yeah.
Yeah. How much walking did you do in Manhattan?
In Manhattan, we did about 17 miles within 2 days. Chicago was about 16 miles. In Seattle, probably 12 or 13 because the hotel that I had chosen was a little bit outside of where, we should have been. So we had to Uber back and forth a little bit. But, yeah. But the walking is great.
Exactly.
I love the walking. And you're just part of the people. You're part of the everyday. This is what people do every day. And we were just part of that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So that was fun. It was a really good time.
Yeah. The one trip to Paris that I've had, the amount of walking was insane. But yeah, that's how you get the experience. And at the end of the day, it's like you're beat.
Yeah.
But, we hit a lot of museums and we hit a lot of cafes, and going to food for a second.
One of his other loves.
I know.
He's a foodie.
Duck in Paris. That's the first time I had duck.
Wow.
And I love duck.
Does it taste like chicken?
It does not. It does not taste like chicken. But the French are well known for preparing. Canard.
Canard.
Yeah, and it's like wow. And the other food memory of Paris was, and I forget what they call them in France as far as the pastry shops.
Pâtisserie.
You walk inside.
A pâtisserie.
A pâtisserie, yes. But it's like the meticulousness of the pastries is amazing. It's like it's colorful. It's all very immaculate.
Pieces of art.
Yes.
They're like little pieces of art.
Edible pieces of art.
Edible pieces of art.
It's like, okay, one of everything?
Yeah. Where do you stop?
Yeah.
Right? But then you justify it because you're on vacation, and
Exactly.
why not?
Yeah. And you're walking 17 miles.
And you're walking Fitbit.
Yeah. And it's just, you don't find that you don't, well, I've been to Germany too, and I've seen some bakeries in central Germany that were kind of similar. I mean, it might be a European thing in general in the sense that the attention to detail in their food presentation
I believe that.
is just wow. It's amazing.
I have to say, I can't remember whether this was Italy or Greece or Turkey or Israel. But we went in one of the oldest bakeries that exists. I have a video of walking through this. We kind of came in the back door, and around like 300 years, this bakery has been running with this brick hearth oven, day in and day out. And the tour took us in the back as compared to coming in the front door like all the other customers. And they gave us just a little taste of things. But in this world that we live in that's so right now, I need this. And I don't know about you, but I grew up with white bread, and we didn't even know what was good for us or for bad for us.
Yeah,
we didn't know any
it was
different.
the cheapest bread.
It was the cheapest bread. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
So now, thankfully, we have options. We have things that we didn't have before. But by seeing this in some of the other countries and stuff, and tasting things in other places, you go, oh, well, this is what I have been missing, and I might want to find that when I get home.
And cooking techniques and recipes from other parts of the world, it's a lot easier now because that's much more prevalent. You can find that a lot easier now. And
Right.
I'm thinking of Indian food. To me, Indian food is the absolute best use of spices anywhere. And a lot of people are kind of hesitant about trying Indian food because it's too spicy or it is different. But I think they are so good at how they mix their spices,
Creative.
they're creative.
Well, just think about, Paul, about how you could take any vegetable or a piece of chicken or whatever, zucchini, and the spices kind of are indicative of where you grew up and what you had. So what was available here, and with the peppers. When I came here and I went to a farmer's market and there was so many peppers compared to what I had in the Midwest, compared to whatever, the same product tastes entirely different depending on the
How
spices.
you create
and
it. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. The Midwest spices, isn't that salt, pepper, and ketchup?
Yeah. Ketchup was my salsa for a long time.
Yeah, that's such a Midwestern thing.
I know.
Ketchup on scrambled eggs.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a ketchup fan
Well,
at all.
I
Because you're
wouldn't-
from the desert. You
Maybe,
grew up in
yeah.
desert.
I love tomatoes. I love spaghetti sauce, but ketchup and fries, no.
Yeah,
Ketchup on my hamburger, no. Not a ketchup fan. Mm-mm.
yeah, but it is based on the
Where
area
you
where you're
are,
from,
yeah.
what you're used to anyway, and you either
And that becomes our comfort.
Yeah.
Right? Those are our comfort things.
Yeah.
Right? That we just.
That's why it's a stretch, like for some people, to go into an Indian restaurant or whatever, if you're not accustomed to it.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a master's student who was from Minnesota, and I felt so proud of myself that I convinced him to try spicy food and to start cooking, and he actually did and liked it. And I consider that an accomplishment because it's getting people to even, here's a jalapeno. It's like, oh, they freak out at a jalapeno.
I freak out at jalapenos.
It's like,
Don't touch them with your hands.
Yeah.
well, I dealt with habaneros, so it's like you just have to be careful with habaneros. But getting people to try things again, and this all goes back to a bigger issue of not just food, it's not just travel, it's getting outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I know I harp on the Caribbean a lot because I fell in love with the Caribbean. I went to Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii about 35 times.
Wow.
Mostly for work on Mauna Kea, a few trips to Maui. And one day I sort of asked myself, if for no other reason, then it's closer. I should give the Caribbean a shot because I had never been to the Caribbean prior to 2016. And so I found this small ship sailing company online called Island Windjammers on Facebook. I don't even remember how I found them, and I just drooled over it. It's like, I want to do it. I want to do it. I really want to do it. Okay, can I afford it? Okay, where am I going to pay for this? When am I going to do it? And so I did it. But it was getting me out of my comfort zone a little bit because this was something completely new. this wasn't a cruise ship. I mean, I've been in an aircraft carrier. An aircraft carrier is just a poor example of a cruise ship. Really,
Without a climbing wall.
It's true.
right,
Yeah.
5,000 people. It's just a
On
floating
top
city.
of each other.
Right, yeah. But a real sailing ship, it only has 24 passengers and a crew of 10. To me, that was something very new. So it was very interesting going to St. Martin all by myself on this. And I'm going to get on this ship, and I know all about the ship, and I know everything, but it was something new to the Caribbean, new to that type of transportation. I so wanted to do it, but I still had this uncertainty. You know, it's like, okay, how's this going to go?
Because you didn't know anybody. It was just you.
It was just me, yeah.
Oh, that is big.
And it's like, it turned out to be a fabulous 12-day sail over 6 islands.
It's more of like an intimate cruise, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why I'm really pushing the Bahama cruise, because it's the same kind of thing.
I'm worried about being seasick. Because big cruise ships are so big that you have to...
never knew. Yeah, you don't know your
But
own.
I don't know about the sailing.
And there's Dramamine too. I mean, there's the two I went on, the two cruises, sails I've been on, the amount of motion is
minimal.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like Gilligan's Island, and you're not just stranded after a 3-hour tour.
No, we do not want to lose anybody. That would be bad. Donna,
Bad
where's
for
Donna?
business.
Where's Donna? Donna, where are you, Donna?
Come back.
Yes, that would be one of those things that would, Donna Reed found 3 weeks later wandering around, St. Lucia.
What was the Tom Hanks movie? She has Wilson, the
Yeah.
soccer
Oh,
player.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
What
not.
was that?
Oh, I don't know.
So let's get to where do you want your next big travel experience to be? If you could choose anywhere in the world, of course, that's a big choice, and there's lots of options. But is there any destination that really sticks out in your mind of what you want to do next?
Let Melissa go
Melissa go
first.
first.
Let Melissa go
Yeah.
first.
Definitely Italy. Tuscany is on my bucket list. I think it's just
Like the vineyard tours.
Yes,
And stuff. Yeah.
and just the villas and
Yeah.
the cobble streets, and it just looks amazing. So that is definitely on my bucket list.
Nice.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, that would be that's it.
All right. Well, you had that answer all really ready to go, spooled up.
That was easy. Yeah, that was easy. Yeah.
It's funny because I have a trip planned for next summer, and I often think through, is it the place or the people that takes me where I want to go?
Oh, it's good.
So the cruise that I'm doing next summer is a riverboat cruise in France, in southern France. But I won't go to Europe without staying 3 or 4 weeks. So now I'm like deciding, am I going to go to Spain? And then my cousin's family is in Germany. And, what will I do to make this probably a 3-week or 4-week adventure? However, it was interesting you brought up Indian food. I recently connected with a pen pal from high school from India. And we've Skyped a couple times on Facebook and stuff now. And the truth is, I've never thought about going to India. But now I am.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
so that would be the people.
Yeah. So, and an experience now that I have seen her on Facebook, I'm seeing like, oh, look at this world she lives in that I've never even remotely thought
of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of in my peripheral for maybe 2021 or something. And if she ever listens to this, I think she knows already. But just in case.
And it would be great for her to come here too.
Right.
Right? Because she's
Right.
never
She's never
experienced
been.
anything
Right.
like Arizona. Yeah.
Exactly. What about you, Paul?
What about me? Yeah, the list is long.
Yeah.
He brings a
And-
scroll
yeah,
out.
do it. It's funny. I planned out an itinerary for somebody in New Jersey to Santorini, and I knew nothing about Santorini before I did that. But the nice thing about things like this is
You learn.
you learn.
Now, where is Santorini? Greece?
It's south of the main
Yeah, one of the
country of
Greek
Greece.
islands.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
and it's an island, and it's like, oh, after I put this together for them, and it didn't lead to anything and such, but I learned quite a bit about Santorini, and it's like I could deal with that. But
There's a lot of steps. There's like 400
Yeah.
and some steps up and down. So either you take the little cable car or you have or a burro.
Oh, that's the rough.
You have to have
rough
good
mode.
knees.
Yeah, exactly.
Good knees.
Yeah, when I was there, my knees were not good. So.
But if I had to choose, it'd be the Cook Island trip that we have put together. It's almost all the way to Australia, not quite, but it is a complete Polynesian experience, and it's when you think of the Cook Islands, most people think of one of the islands, which is Rarotonga. But the way we put together this, and that's one of the things I like about this kind of work is, making unique experiences. You really not just get to learn the destination yourself, but you get to share that with people. And the way we put this together is it's 1 week and 3 islands. And so you fly into Rarotonga, but you take a day trip to Atu and a day trip to Atutaki, and you get to actually really live like a local
Melissa,
if you want to.
do you know any of those island names?
I can't even.
No,
I would
me
never
neither.
be able to say them.
Me neither. I'm going to have to go look it up.
Raritaki.
In practice. It's all practice. That's all it is.
Show off.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about going there is you can, if you want to hunt for feral pigs, you can do that and learn how they do it. You can dig
That
for
is
crabs.
living like a local.
That is living like a local. Yeah,
That's the experience.
it is. But do you either of you know the main country that influences the Cook Islands as far as historically?
No idea.
It's New Zealand. And they have a New Zealand currency, and there's a quite the connection there. But that would be my choice of where to go. And it's the
Is that your trip next year?
That's next October actually.
Okay.
But I'm a tropical person. A dude from Iowa, turned
That's
into
true.
I would agree
Hawaii
with you,
and Caribbean and yeah, you're right.
You can't go wrong
Although
with the
Maine,
tropics.
Yeah.
You do like Maine, and Maine is not.
Lobster.
Maine in June. That's the important point.
That's the Maine tropics.
Yes, the snow is gone. The lobsters are coming out. Yeah, so absolutely. That's why if I'm ever going to go to Canada, it's going to be in the summer.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But so that's I think we've got a good sense. Let's one final point. We only have a few minutes left. But what do you find? Why is travel valuable to you? Simple question, Donna.
That's like short answer, Donna. Honestly, so I work in residential real estate. And not only do I love to travel, but it also helps me connect. We have so many the people that come here because of the military, because of the mining, because of Raytheon, because of the university, that I feel like it helps me connect to people from all over the world. And if I can share that I've experienced something that they've experienced, it just creates a bond much more quickly.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah.
I would say it's the memories and the connections you can make with those that you take with you.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, things go away. My kids don't remember what I got them for Christmas 2 years ago, but they will remember the trip to Hawaii we took for Christmas last year, and they will remember these trips. So it's definitely about the memories for me.
That's great.
Yeah. I guess one of the main things for me that has popped up in the last few years is really having a good understanding of history and why things are the way they are now. And you don't really get a good handle on that until you actually go there. And again, I go back to the Caribbean as my example because I found this absolutely fabulous book on the history of the Caribbean from Columbus to the 1950s, written by a former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And I just did not know anything about the cultural context until after being there, learning about the history, and it really does color your understanding of why things are the way they are. And I think that's important. People need that perspective. A lot of our historical knowledge is very shallow, and we need to build on that.
Very true. Have you opened up a social studies book? Yeah. There's nothing there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. But anyway, well, I think that sort of wraps up our hour, I think. And thank you very much, Donna and Melissa, for being here. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Having us.
thank
It
you.
was fun. It was a
Appreciate
lot of
it.
fun.
All right.